Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. How bad is it? How worried should we be?
You're seeing a situation that is the same as existed really in the 1930 to 45 period, in that now we're seeing the production of a lot of debt, a lot of borrowing by the government. We're seeing zero interest rates and not the traditional kind of monetary policy, but the producing of a lot of money and credit. So the Federal Reserve is buying the Treasury's debt, and the Treasury is getting that money to mostly Americans in some imperfect but remarkably large way. And the Europeans are doing the same in their way. That bank is a smaller bank because the world lives with about 70% dollars and only a small percent euro, and they will produce theirs for theirs. And there aren't many banks around the world. And so the rest of the world is going to have gaps, holes that won't be filled. So there'll be a big differentiation as to which entities benefit and which entities don't.
Do you think that we're headed into a global depression?
So what do you mean by a depression? Okay. Something like happened in the 1930s. So just to repeat, 1929 to 1932, there was a fall in the economy and a very double-digit unemployment rates and a magnitude of fall in the economy like about 10%. Do I think we're in that? Yes. How was that dealt with? 1933. What they did is they printed a lot of money. And the government came out with the same type of programs that we're having now. Yes, okay, same thing. Zero interest rates hit zero. Same thing. Okay, same dynamics. And then there is that money causes an expansion from that point. How long does it take for the stock market to exceed its highs? Or how long does it take for the economy to exceed its former highs? A long time. Okay, do I think that's what we're in? Yes, that's what we're in. It'll pass. The world will be very different. There'll be a new world order, but it will pass and will be inventive because what we're dealing with now is just money and credit. Money and credit is just digital. I mean, there is real goods, services, those are real, but everything else is just accounting. And so when you change the digits and you work those things out and you work yourself through, that takes, a couple of years at most, kind of, and then you come back into a restructured environment.
A lot of people seem to think that within, I don't know, a year, we'll be back where you are. You're saying, no, it's going to take longer. Does that imply that there is basically a sort of some systemic shocks that the market hasn't yet fully seen, perhaps to do with the inability of some players to handle the extreme levels of debt that are piling up right now as people can't work?
Some people mistake this as there is a virus, and the virus may come and go. Okay, maybe we never see it again. I don't think that's likely, but I mean, the people who tell me say, but who knows? But if it never came back again, there will be those who are broke and who will have loss of income. We're going to change how we operate in a way. The supply lines are going to change. In other words, self-sufficiency. What is self-sufficiency now going to mean? Do we have enough of this and that? We're going to restructure our economy and restructure the financial system in ways that mean we are not going to go back to the way it was.
So do you see systemic threats to the financial industry as great or greater than happened in 2008?
Yeah, this is bigger than what happened in 2008. I'll distinguish it. In 2008, we had banks. It's the same thing, meaning you have a certain amount of leverage, things go down. Too much leverage means you're broke in accounting terms. So then you look around and you say, who are the systemically important entities that you don't want to go broke? Because do you want to lose those banks at this time? And then you can make up money and make up credit, and you can keep them alive in some way. And you did it with banks, and through the banks, there were the mortgages, and that's what it looked like. This is more complex than that, because there are the banks, and then there are all of those that are beyond banks. all of the little businesses, all of those in all the different places that are beyond it. And it's a bigger crisis, and we have a less effective monetary policy because interest rates declines have reached their limit. And just buying financial assets by the central bank and buying the normal financial assets won't work. They have to buy the debt of the government, and the government, or the many governments, have to be effective in getting buying power and production to those who need it around the world.
What kinds of industries, organizations, companies have the best prospects of thriving going forward?
There are two types, basically. There are those that are stable meat and potatoes, not leveraged kind of companies, the Campbell soup equivalent, like everybody's going to use them all time kind of thing. And then there are the innovators, those who can adapt well and innovate well and don't have balance sheet problems. In other words, they have strong balance sheets, so they're going to be able to play the game without having that. They will be great winners. And so there's always new inventions, new creativity that is the new adaptation that becomes a company and an entrepreneur. And they're going to do great, plus the stuff that we're always going to need. Those are the things that are going to do great.
In terms of our recovery, this seems like something that is going to require a coordinated effort, financially, spiritually, in so many different ways. If we retreat from globalization right now, does that make everything harder going forward?
If we retreat from globalization, which we certainly will do, it will certainly make things very hard. And when you have Congresses and presidents, and they start to say, who will we help? And how will that be? And what will that mean? It gets down to real practical questions. And the reality is a lot of those people won't be helped. And then you'll deal with how will they behave for each other? Are one country's vulnerabilities another country's opportunities? This isolation of the United States relative to the rest of the world, this deglobalization, began before we had this that fosters more of it, right? And it happened for reasons, okay? So don't overlook those reasons, and don't overlook the reading of history just because we wish it can happen. If you want to wish it happens, everything is all dependent on the behavior of those who have their hands on the levers of power. I would tell you, like, for example, right now, I've been going to China for a long time, and the Chinese, in many ways, are helping, in many ways, things that are needed in this crisis and all that. To even say that is a politically challenging thing, okay? Because we're in a world that is so fragmented that even to publicly say thank you, and thank you to many people and many companies, it's almost dangerous to say thank you to those who are helping, because we're now in an environment in which there are enemies, and who is evil, and do you fall into that category? And so the history of these is there's demonizations of different people. Okay, now you must see it around you. It exists. And so how we come out of this will be how we behave with each other.
So what's our opportunity here? What changes can we make?
Throughout all history, you go back hundreds of years, you see that any system works for those who tend to control the system. I'm a capitalist. I believe in the system. I believe you can increase the size of the pie and you could divide it well. And if we talk about how to do that effectively, we need to do it. But there becomes a time that there needs reforms, and those reforms have to create productivity. It doesn't mean just give money away. It means how do you make those people productive so that they're also psychologically productive as well as physically productive in producing output. Now we are restructuring it, okay? It's the inevitable consequence of what we're doing here. We will come out of that. There's been a tremendous transfer of wealth, whether people realize it or not. through the production of all of that borrowed money and all of that producing of money, that is a big force. We will come out of here. And the thing we will talk about over the next couple of years, and probably sooner rather than later, is how we do that restructuring. And my worry now is the same as my worry then, whether that will be done in a civil, bipartisan way that will both increase the size of the pie and divide it well, rather than damage the economy because you lose productivity. There are certain things that are great investments. Education is a great investment. The more people you have that are well educated and you have equal education, the more people you're going to have who have a chance to compete with each other and raise that over a period of time. It's a hell of an investment. It will produce more productivity than it ever will cost if it's done well. But what happens is states and localities think of it as a budget item. So they look at expenses and they penny pinch on the education, because if you're in a rich town, your kids will get a good education. And if you're not, and a large percentage of the population is losing that. So that has to be engineered well so that they're productive as well as divide the pie well, and everybody believes that the system is fair. If we can get there, am I optimistic that we will get there? I don't know. I would say I'm 60-40 pessimistic that we'll be good enough with each other to do that. But there's that possibility. This is our test. This is our stress test.
Ray, thank you so much for this. This was really, really, really interesting. Thank you so much. Thanks all.
Thank you.